Today's video, Maryland's Democrat governor is being sued by a group of Maryland sheriffs over immigration legislation that the governor refused to veto. And so right now in Maryland, you have Wes Moore, the governor, who many believe he has presidential hopes for the Democrat Party 2028, received major backlash from the sheriffs in the state of Maryland because he's cut off communication between local state law enforcement and federal law enforcement, such as ICE, ladies and gentlemen. And so what we're seeing here is a situation where there was literally no problem. And Democrat leaders, instead of focusing on issues pertaining to their state and what is best for the citizens, are more focused on sending a national message towards the Trump administration. As always, if you enjoy the content, smash that thumbs up button. That's the best way to let me know to stay locked in with future videos. Subscribe to the channel. Let's start right here.
Maryland's controversial new immigration law is already facing legal challenges.
The Federation for American Immigration Reform, or FAIR, says it plans to file a class action lawsuit today on behalf of more than 2/3 of Maryland sheriffs challenging the newly enacted Community Trust Act.
Stephanie Douglas is live on your corner in Annapolis with why sheriffs across Maryland are pushing back against this new law. Stephanie, good morning.
Tim, Amy, good morning to you both. Now, that Community Trust Act is now in effect, and what some may see as immigration reform, FAIR, and some sheriffs across Maryland are calling it unconstitutional. Now, the group says that the Community Trust Act, it puts them in what they call an impossible position by restricting cooperation with ICE they believe is authorized and in some cases required. In their lawsuit against the state, the governor, and the attorney general, FAIR argues that immigration enforcement falls under federal authority, and they say that state laws that obstruct this authority violate supremacy clause of the U.S. Constitution. FAIR and some Maryland sheriffs across the state believe that Governor Wes Moore should have vetoed the bill because it weakens public safety and conflicts with federal law. Take a listen to what Carroll County Sheriff Jim DeWeese had to say.
So the best outcome is that a federal judge gives us some sort of emergency or injunctive relief so that we can continue to communicate with ICE on these matters until it's heard by the courts and portions of it are deemed unconstitutional, and then we can continue to communicate. That's what we're hoping to get out of this as soon as possible, based on the legislation that comes out of Annapolis. And this is one of those bills that puts everyone in jeopardy. They're doing it just to save one individual. At least they think they are, and they'll sacrifice all of you as a result.
Now, although Governor Wes Moore said that he wouldn't reject the bill last week, he did acknowledge that parts of the legislation still needed to be addressed next session. Now, FAIR is expected to hold a press conference later this morning at 11 a.m., and that's going to take place here in Annapolis at Lawyers Mall. Reporting live on your corner this morning in Annapolis, I'm Stephanie Douglas for WJZ.
Yeah, and so the Maryland governor, he thinks he's slick, right? Because Wes Moore, first off, this guy, a lot of people are projecting that he is going to end up running for 2028 Democrat Party presidential race, primary, and see who comes out of that. And so we got the situation where the bill was able to pass through state legislation. It did that, and he didn't sign it. Okay, that's the part that they're making sure you know. He didn't sign it. And when you hear that, you're going to say, oh, that means he doesn't necessarily agree with his fellow party members. He's standing up against this. But he also does not veto the bill, ladies and gentlemen. And once it passes through state legislation and it ends up on the governor's desk and he does not physically sign it for it to become law, and he refuses to veto it within a required window, guess what? The bill becomes law anyway. And so basically, it's the same as if he would have signed it. And so was that taking the political coward's way out, right? Think about it, because now he can go back and say, hey, look, to the party leaders, he can go back and say, I didn't block the bill. I didn't veto it. I stood up against Trump and his immigration agenda, while at the same time claim that he's concerned about public safety. And so is that the reason why he didn't sign it? But take a listen to this, because while they are also out there protecting the rights of the illegal aliens, they're ignoring those victims. Take a listen.
I'm Rick Ritter.
And I'm Nikki Zizaza. The bill became law without Governor Westmore's signature, and critics say it limits local authorities from cooperating with ICE.
But as Janae Reese reports tonight, advocates say it is necessary to protect immigrants' due process rights.
There's no easy way to tell you this. We found your daughter's body.
Rachel Morin's mother standing with more than a dozen Maryland sheriffs against the new Community Trust Act in Annapolis. It's a new law that stops law enforcement from holding someone for ICE without a warrant, except for felony crimes and sex offenders.
7 days ago would have been her 40th birthday. She was raped, brutally beaten, murdered, stuffed into a drain pipe.
Morin is supporting sheriffs across the state pushing back on this legislation nearly a year after her daughter's killer, Victor Martinez Hernandez, an El Salvador native, was sentenced to life in prison.
You, by passing this law, are punishing us.
The Federation for American Immigration Reform, an advocacy group, is filing the federal lawsuit on behalf of 17 out of 24 Maryland sheriffs against the bill.
The human cost of this legislation is not hypothetical. It is measured in preventable tragedies.
The state of Maryland is not entitled to ignore federal law simply because it doesn't like it.
Senator Clarence Lamb, a sponsor of the bill, says it's completely legal and protects all Maryland residents.
It's a block on them being able to communicate when people might be coming in for booking or coming into local jails or interacting with local law enforcement like our local sheriffs, from being able to informally notify ICE that that person is there.
In a statement, the Moore administration wrote that the governor has been clear and remains unchanged. The statement went on to say, in part, that Maryland can support law enforcement, protect constitutional rights, and keep our communities safe at the same time.
This is just not a legal battle. This is not a debate about public policy, but it's a human battle.
The Community Trust Act is expected to take effect in June. Reporting on your corner, I'm Janae Reese for WJZ.
And so one of the biggest pushbacks you are hearing about this bill is that, was it really necessary? There was no problem until Democrats created the problem. Rather than focus on state issues, they're trying to send a message to the White House. But what does this actually solve? The only thing they can point to is issues happening in other states like Minnesota. And listen, if you want to argue about the tactics that were being used at that time, fine, okay, but Tom Homan is now in charge. Kristi Noem has been removed, and they are focusing more on targeted arrests, which is what you should want, removing those individuals who are a danger and a threat to the community. But take a listen to what the Democrat reps in Maryland had to say when confronted about what's going on in their state that forced them to pass this bill. Check it out.
Behind new immigration bills.
We know that trust matters when it comes to law enforcement and the people that they serve.
And the Community Trust Act that just became law without the governor's signature, limiting local cooperation with ICE. Senate President Bill Ferguson says,
we cannot keep communities safe if people are being stripped of their rights. When ICE is pulling mothers out of their cars and detaining 5-year-olds, we need to move forward.
And while there have been reports of similar incidents happening elsewhere in the country, what about in Maryland? We sent questions to Senate President Bill Ferguson asking what specific incident he was referring to and if it was an incident that happened in Maryland. Has the Senate President seen or received reports of ICE misconduct in the state, or is he referencing out-of-state examples? And how many of these types of incidents is he aware of in Maryland?
By and large, we aren't seeing the same type of activity play out in Maryland that we're seeing in other states like Minnesota. So do you believe by taking some of these actions in Maryland, it's more about taking a stand nationally than it is really about addressing concerns in the state?
Exactly. You see, the Democrat Party has become so hell-bent on opposing the president that even at the risk of placing the very people they're supposed to represent in danger, they have no problem doing it. How ridiculous is it that nothing is happening in your state with communication and how federal agents are carrying out their duties, working with state and local law enforcement, but the people who do not work on the ground level and are not living in these communities where these threats are located, they want to disrupt what's actually been working just fine and want to disguise it under the veil of life or death. We're doing it for the community. Exaggerated fear tactics to justify their actions.
No, it's about addressing concerns in the state. The people that I represent and my colleagues, we get the calls.
While lawmakers have previously pointed to national issues, they haven't been able to point to specific examples in this state.
I would say that immigration, it falls into whether you die or you live today, okay? Which is as important because people are losing their lives because of it.
In Maryland?
They're losing their lives in the U.S., and just because it hasn't happened here doesn't mean that it's not going to happen because it's still ICE.
Even in Baltimore City,
ICE was behaving in ways that were unsafe, that caused stress and trauma and harm to our communities. And so as a result, we asked for school police presence.
As council members took steps to limit the city's cooperation with ICE.
Have you actually seen cases of ICE in Baltimore breaking the law?
I have not personally. However, I know that we are seeing an escalation.
And while the Community Trust Act is taking effect, some lawmakers like Delegate Ryan Rocky argue.
So if you want to stop the kinds of things like we might have seen around the country where ICE agents are going to apprehend folks in the streets, you should want to have them work with law enforcement when someone is already in their custody. It actually has the exact opposite effect and will in fact encourage more of those kinds of situations to occur because now law enforcement, local law enforcement can't communicate with our federal partners. And so ICE or other federal agencies will have to be back in the streets going after these people as opposed to a simple prisoner transfer like they've been doing for years here safely and effectively in Maryland.
It's almost like common sense is just repelled by the left, ladies and gentlemen. These people really don't have a leg to stand on, and so you hear them using language like stress, trauma, harmed, unsafe, all vague, ambiguous words that they really do not have real meaning. But you just don't got to back it up with facts, and so they just throw them out there and use them because it works. It helps people think something is really happening when it's really not. Definitely not at the rate they want you to believe it is. And it's just so interesting to watch how Democrats have willingly decided that this is the hill they're going to die on, right? With the far left to the point where they literally will just make up problems where none exist. Now law enforcement in Maryland, they know that the governor, the Democrat reps in that state, they have put the people in that state in more danger all over political gain at the end of the day. But those are my thoughts in the update. Now I want to hear from you. Drop your comment down below. I appreciate when you guys chime in. Don't forget, you enjoy the content, smash that thumbs up. For more, subscribe to the channel. And as always, until next time.